You ever get praised so often that it starts to feel like a warning? Like someone's trying to butter you up just enough to keep you quiet, but not enough to actually feed you? That was my life for 4 straight years. My name's Leo Mendoza. I'm 36 years old, and until recently, I was a senior campaign strategist at a mid-sized marketing agency called Perch and Veil. We weren't flashy, but we had a solid client base and a decent reputation. I'd been there since I was 32, just after my last agency imploded in a merger. When I landed this role, I told myself I'd make it stick, build something stable, and for a while, that's exactly what I tried to do. My cubicle was a mess, organized chaos, as I like to call it. Stacks of old pitch decks, half-drunk coffees, a drawer full of Sharpies I'd stolen from conference rooms over the years. But the chaos worked. I delivered results. My client retention rate was one of the best in the agency. I helped bring in 2 major accounts during my first year, and by year 2, I was mentoring newer hires and designing training modules. I never missed a deadline, never called out, and every single year, like clockwork, I walked into my annual review with a binder of metrics, a calm demeanor, and a simple question: can we talk about a raise? And every year, Mara smiled that tight managerial smile and gave me a rehearsed monologue about timing. You're one of our strongest assets, Leo, but the budget this quarter. Or, I fought for you in the last comp cycle, but leadership just isn't green-lighting adjustments right now. She'd finish it with some compliment that was supposed to make it all okay. Your loyalty speaks louder than a number ever could. As if rent and groceries accepted gratitude. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the insult of it. The way she weaponized praise, kept me on a hook, telling me I was essential, irreplaceable, admired. But admiration doesn't pay down student loans or build a future. And for a long time, I swallowed it. I convinced myself I was playing the long game. That stability was worth more than pride, that eventually someone would notice. What finally cracked me wasn't even Mara. It was a junior strategist, Lena. Bright kid. I trained her myself when she joined 18 months ago. One afternoon, we were prepping a campaign launch, and she mentioned how happy she was about finally hitting 70. I paused. 70,000? I asked, pretending to check my notes. Yeah, she grinned. Took some pushing, but HR came through. They said it's standard now for client-facing creatives. I smiled, nodded, finished the meeting. But inside, something twisted. I was making 63, after 4 years, and Lena, whom I trained, who still came to me when clients got tricky, was already ahead of me. Not her fault. I wasn't angry at her. I was angry at myself for being so damn predictable. That night, I stayed late, not to finish a brief, but to stare at my screen and ask myself what the hell I was still doing there. The office was quiet, lights half-dimmed. I clicked open my resume for the first time in years. It was a mess, outdated, awkward. But I started fixing it, one bullet point at a time. Client growth percentages, key projects, a list of Fortune 500 accounts I'd helped manage from pitch to post-mortem. As I typed, I started to remember what I'd actually done here, what I'd built, and how none of it had translated into anything but hollow compliments and longer hours. The next morning, Mara swung by my desk with her usual, "How's my rock star?" energy. I smiled and nodded, played along. But something in me had shifted. I was no longer waiting for her to give me anything. I was finally ready to go take it. You know what the worst part is? I don't think Mara ever saw it coming. She mistook quiet for contentment, but I wasn't content. I was tired. Tired of pretending that loyalty and stagnation were the same thing. Tired of watching newer hires leapfrog me because they negotiated harder or had shinier resumes. Tired of being the steady hand while others got the rewards. That night, I hit submit on my first external application in 4 years. No announcement, no bitterness, just a quiet decision made in a quiet office. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was back in motion, like I'd stopped waiting for permission to matter. I told myself it was just curiosity, just dipping a toe in the water to see what I was worth. No harm in that, right? The interview was scheduled for 8:30 a.m. on a Thursday, half an hour before my normal shift at Perch and Vale. I wore a navy button-down, swapped my usual messenger bag for a sleeker portfolio case, and told Mara I'd be working remote that morning due to apartment repairs. A lie, but a polite one. She didn't ask for details. She rarely did. The rival firm, Alton & Keene, was 3 blocks away and 3 floors higher in every sense. Their office had sunlight, actual windows, a coffee bar that didn't taste like burnt optimism, and more importantly, a vibe, casual but focused. People smiled like they weren't faking it. The interview lasted just under an hour. The hiring manager, a woman named Samir, had clearly done her homework. She knew my accounts, knew which campaigns I'd run and which ones I'd saved from falling apart. At one point, she leaned forward and said, "So you've been doing the work of a director without the title or the pay?" I gave a half smile. "That's generous." She shook her head. "That's common." They offered me the role the next day, Senior Strategist 2, overseeing 2 junior analysts, with a base salary 30% higher than what I was making. Benefits included equity vesting and a remote hybrid structure. It was everything I'd asked Mara for, everything she said the company just couldn't do right now. I didn't accept. Not immediately. I wasn't scared. I was disappointed. After 4 years of loyalty, this firm, a competitor, recognized my value within 60 minutes. And Mara, for all her speeches about me being foundational, had never moved the needle a dime. Still, I believed in clean exits, so I gave her a chance. Scheduled a one-on-one on Monday morning. She accepted, probably thinking it was about workload or client pipeline. I wore my usual neutral expression and walked into her office with calm clarity. "Mara," I said, settling into the guest chair across from her desk, "I want to talk to you directly before decisions get made without conversation." She tilted her head. "You're not leaving, are you?" That caught me off guard. I haven't accepted anything. But I did interview elsewhere. They reached out last week. Her smile faded just a touch. Not gone, just tightened. "Okay. I've been offered a role with a 30% salary increase, a title bump, and team leadership. They're not throwing money around. They just evaluated my track record." She said nothing. "I wanted to come to you first," I continued. "I'd rather stay. I like the clients. I know the work, and I've invested a lot here. But I need to be paid in alignment with the value I bring. This other offer reflects that." Still silence. Her fingers tapped once on her desk, then stopped. When she finally spoke, her voice was flat. "You should have come to me before applying." "I did," I said, 4 years in a row. "That's not what I mean." She stood, walked around to the other side of the desk, and leaned against it like a disappointed principal. "You blindsided me, Leo. That's not loyalty." I blinked. "You locked me in a salary band and called it patience. I didn't blindside you. I just stopped waiting for you to change your mind." Her eyes hardened. "You've crossed a line." And then it happened. No yelling, no HR liaison. Just a quick movement as she returned to her computer, tapped a few keys, and said without looking at me, "Your access has been revoked. IT is escorting you out." I stared at her. 4 years. 4 years of early mornings, crisis weekends, client wins, and we couldn't have done this without Leo. All deleted with a keystroke. And still, I didn't raise my voice. I stood up slowly, collected my things, and said, "I hope you find what you're looking for." "Good luck, Mara." She didn't reply. She just minimized the screen and reached for her coffee. IT met me by my cubicle. They were sheepish. Mike, the guy from support, couldn't even meet my eyes as he handed me a cardboard box and said, "Just your personal items, man. Sorry." I didn't have much to pack. A few notepads, my spare blazer, the ceramic mug my niece gave me. It was all done in under 5 minutes. No announcement, no farewell email, just quiet. As I walked out of the building, the sun was blinding. Not metaphorically, just literally bright. It bounced off the glass towers like it had no idea my life had just shifted sideways. And strangely, I wasn't angry. I was stunned, sure, a little hollow. But beneath that, a current of something else, something sharper. Not rage, not grief, freedom. They'd cut me loose thinking it was punishment. But all they did was save me the trouble of writing a resignation letter. I stood on the curb, box in hand, watching the city swirl around me. Then I turned east, toward a future that, just days ago, I'd been too loyal to consider. The first Monday at Alton and Keene felt like switching from black and white to color. Their office was bright, literally. Big windows, tall ceilings, polished concrete floors that somehow didn't feel cold. I didn't get a cubicle. I got a real desk, by a window, with a nameplate already printed and waiting. The team greeted me with actual warmth, not the performative, "Welcome aboard, you forget by lunch." Even the coffee didn't taste like surrender. My manager, Samir, handed me a neat folder with 3 clients I'd be shadowing that week. She said, "We trust your instincts. Run with what makes sense. No micromanaging, no culture of fear, no one policing Slack messages or tracking lunch breaks. Just trust." And for the first time in a long time, I felt capable. Not just competent, actually seen. By week 2, I was leading my own campaign. A logistics company wanted a rebrand, leaner visuals, sharper messaging. I dove in headfirst, pulled 2 juniors onto my team, and ran a strategy session that left everyone buzzing. Samir stopped by afterward and said, "You're already making a mark." I nodded, said thanks. But part of me was still adjusting to this feeling. Respect, without begging for it. That Friday, Samir sent me a message. "Can I loop you in on something sensitive?" We met in a glass-walled huddle room, so modern I half expected to be offered oat milk and a meditation mat. She closed the door behind her, leaned against the whiteboard, and said, "2 clients from your old firm reached out to us." Quietly. "They're unhappy." I raised an eyebrow. "Which clients?" "Unbound Threads and Meadow Sun Logistics." I almost laughed. Those were 2 of my biggest accounts at Perch and Vale. I'd built the Unbound relationship from scratch, back when they were just a 3-store operation trying to compete with Zara knockoffs. Meadow Sun was trickier. Logistics accounts always are. But I'd kept them stable for 3 years. When I left, I didn't say a word to either. Professional courtesy. "They asked if you were here," Samir added. "Said they noticed you disappeared without warning." Mara apparently tripled rates without adding services. They're paying more for less, and not quietly. I leaned back. That sounded like her. Samir continued, "We're not asking you to poach, but if they bring you up by name, we'd be foolish not to explore that." I nodded slowly. "I'll do it right. No pitch decks, just reconnection." That weekend, I wrote 2 short emails. Warm, direct, no pressure. "Hi, James. Just wanted to say I've moved on from Perch and Vale. Hope all's well with the spring line. If you ever want to catch up, let me know. Always appreciated our collaborations. Leo." Both clients replied within 24 hours. James from Unbound said, "I thought something felt off." We kept asking for you. Now it makes sense. Lena from Meadow Sun was even more blunt. They've been evasive for weeks. Call me Monday. On Monday, I called. James sounded relieved. You were the reason we stayed with Perch and Vale, Leo. When you vanished, it went downhill fast. Now it's all buzzwords and bills. I'm not here to pitch you, I said. I just wanted to connect. Well, I am asking for a pitch, he shot back. Send me whatever you've got. That week, I rebuilt both proposals from the ground up. I didn't rehash my old work. I evolved it, showed them what it could look like with real support behind it. Within 2 weeks, both clients signed. No drama, no social media declarations, just 2 NDAs, a handshake, and a quiet message from Samir. We just closed your old house. Nicely done. I sat at my new desk and stared out the window for a long time. The city moved like it always did. Buses groaning, pigeons scattering, late lunchers jogging across crosswalks. But it looked different now. I didn't feel like a defector. I felt like someone who'd been let out of a cage. I never once mentioned Mara during the transition. Didn't have to. The clients told their own stories about rate hikes, about confusion, about a cold new voice on every call. They weren't angry at her exactly. Just done. The same way I had been. And the best part? I hadn't stolen a single thing. I didn't email anyone from my old account list. I didn't beg anyone to follow me. I just showed up, offered value, and let them decide who they trusted more. That trust wasn't hers to revoke. It had always been mine to earn. As I logged out for the evening, I glanced at the small metal plate on my desk. My name, etched cleanly in matte black. That small detail meant more than I expected. Not because it was shiny, but because it finally felt like it belonged. I gathered my things, slung my bag over my shoulder, and walked out under a sky just beginning to tint orange with the end of the day. I didn't feel heavy. I didn't feel vengeful. Just clear. You didn't steal clients. You earned loyalty. And this time, no one could take that from me. The conference badge around my neck felt heavier than usual, not because of its weight, but because of what it represented. Senior panelist, Leo Mendoza, Alton and Keene. 6 months ago, my title had been stapled to a cubicle at Perch and Vale. Now, I was on stage at the Eastern Marketing Leadership Summit, sitting alongside execs I used to silently study from the audience. The panel was called Building Loyalty in an Age of Turnover, which felt like the universe was having a little fun with me. Still, I meant every word I said. I spoke calmly, deliberately, not from notes, just from memory, of what it felt like to be loyal to a place that saw that loyalty as a discount, of what it felt like to watch good people walk away because no one bothered to hold the door open for them, and of how retention isn't just about perks or ping-pong tables. It's about respect, about recognizing value before someone else does. After the session, people lined up to shake my hand. One woman from a fintech startup said, "You put into words what our whole team's been feeling." Another guy asked if I'd be open to consulting later this year. I gave him my card and nodded, all while scanning the room casually, until I saw her. Mara. She was standing by the networking bar, holding a drink she clearly hadn't touched. Her blazer was sharp, her smile even sharper. But I could tell, almost instantly, she was off. Her energy was too polished, too performative. The way she caught my eye and strode toward me was all show, like she was trying to reframe the power dynamic before a word had even been spoken. "Leo," she said, like we were old friends meeting for coffee. "Didn't realize you'd be on the panel." "I was invited," I said evenly. "Good to see you, Mara." She laughed lightly, brushing imaginary lint off her sleeve. "You were excellent up there, really, insightful." "Thank you." There was a beat. She stepped closer, lowering her voice just enough to make the conversation feel private. I wanted to say, I may have been too quick back then, with how things ended. I let that hang in the air. She waited, but I didn't fill the silence. Our firm's been going through some transitions, she continued. Restructuring, a lot's shifting. We've reopened the director of strategy role. I think you'd be a perfect fit. There it was, the olive branch, tied with a frayed ribbon. We're much more flexible on compensation now, she added quickly, her eyes searching mine. I think we underestimated your range. I nodded, slowly. Maybe you did. She smiled again, a little tighter this time. Well, it's open if you want to talk. I mean that sincerely. I glanced over her shoulder at the rotating LED panel that displayed our session's topic again. Loyalty in an age of turnover. The irony didn't escape me. I appreciate the offer, I said, keeping my voice measured, but I'm exactly where I need to be. She blinked once, nodded, and did her best not to let the mask slip. Of course. Had to ask. Of course, I said. Good luck with the restructuring. And then I walked away. Not smug, not gloating. Just done. Later that evening, I grabbed a beer with Trevor, a mutual contact who still floated between firms as an independent consultant. He raised an eyebrow when I mentioned running into Mara. She didn't tell you? He asked. Tell me what? She's been hemorrhaging accounts, 5 in the last month. 3 of them followed you out the door, Unbound Meadowsun and Hillcrest. I heard the boards putting pressure on her to step down quietly. I sipped my drink, watching the conference lights flicker across the ballroom ceiling. She was hoping you'd be her win, Trevor added. A comeback story. Get the golden boy back. I didn't reply right away. I didn't need to. The truth sat between us like a stone in the center of the table. It wasn't about revenge anymore. Not really. It was about truth catching up. She'd had me for 4 years. Had my loyalty, my work, my weekends. She had the chance to lead, to support, to value, and she chose to exploit. Now, she wanted to pay me more? Not because she believed in me, because she was drowning. I finished my drink and stood. She can't afford me now, I said quietly, but she never could. Trevor gave a low whistle and raised his glass, to knowing your worth. I nodded and made my way out into the night, the city humming around me, the badge still swinging against my chest. Not heavy anymore, just earned. 3 months into the new role, I still catch myself arriving early. Not because anyone's watching, and not because I'm trying to prove anything. It's just different now. I wake up wanting to go in. There's something about walking into a space where your name is on the door. Not just literally, but in the energy, in the culture, in the way people speak to one another. My desk sits near the western windows, where the sun spills in like it's been waiting for me. I was promoted last month, 6 months ahead of the projected track. Director of Strategy, officially. Samir said the leadership team didn't even vote. It was unanimous. They told me I'd brought in trust, structure, and vision. I told them I'd just done what I wish someone had done for me years ago. Now I run a team of 8, with 2 more being onboarded next quarter. We instituted full pay transparency across the department. I made sure of it. Every analyst knows the salary bands, the promotion pathways, and how to advocate for themselves. No smoke, no mirrors, no loyalty tax disguised as patience. Today, after our team huddle, one of the new hires, a sharp, curious guy named Caleb, walked up to me with a nervous smile. "Hey, Leo," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "Can I ask you something?" "Totally fine if it's off limits." "Shoot," I said, setting my coffee down. "I was just wondering, what happened at your last job? I've heard whispers from a couple people who used to work at Perch and Vale. Sounds like you left pretty fast." I paused, not because I didn't have an answer, but because I wanted to give him the right one. I stayed too long in a place that only valued me after I left, I said. Won't make that mistake twice. He nodded slowly, like he understood more than he let on. Thanks. That helps. I smiled and clapped him on the shoulder. Make sure you never forget your own value. No one else gets to set it for you. He left with a little more weight in his step. Later that afternoon, I sat back in my chair and checked the news while waiting for a client call. A small headline on a business blog caught my eye. Perch and Veil merges with Elman Digital aftermarket struggles. I tapped it. The article was dressed up in corporate language, strategic alignment, exciting new chapter, brand synergies. But the story was clear between the lines. It wasn't a merger. It was a rescue. Quiet, clinical, and overdue. I didn't feel triumphant. No rush of "I told you so." Just a clean line drawn in my mind between who I was then and who I am now. That old office, with its flickering fluorescent lights and Mara's glassy smile, belonged to a version of me who waited for permission to grow. This office, this team, it's something I built with intention. I didn't inherit someone else's broken structure. I created a space where people can rise and still feel whole. I looked down at the nameplate on my desk. Leo Mendoza, Director of Strategy. Simple, matte silver, no flourish. But it meant something. Not because it was engraved, because it wasn't borrowed, because no one could yank it away with a keystroke. I stood, walked to the window, and watched as the sun dipped behind the skyline. Orange flooded the walls, brushing everything in that golden hour calm. The city moved below, indifferent but alive. Horns, footsteps, fragments of conversation riding the wind. I took it all in, letting the moment settle into my bones. I thought of the years I gave to Mara's firm, the late nights, the sacrifices, the quiet swallowing of disappointment. I thought of how she smiled as she revoked my access, thinking she'd taught me a lesson. She had, but not the one she meant to. She taught me never to wait for someone else to define my worth, never to confuse endurance with growth, never to stay in a room where your voice only matters when you're walking out the door. Behind me, the office buzzed softly, keys tapping, ideas forming, people doing what they were hired to do with dignity and direction. And there I was, not above them, not apart from them, but among them. Finally, wholly myself. I didn't burn the bridge. I just built a better one and walked across it.